Good evening, everybody. I'm Jerry Willis. As the tax cut debate heats up, Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke defending his latest plan to save our economy. He stands by his decision to buy $600 billion in bonds with newly printed money. Will it work? Well, my next guest calls Bernanke dangerous and the worst chairman the Fed's ever had. David Stockman is the former director of the Office of Management and Budget under President Reagan. Welcome, sir. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Let's start with the tax cuts. Interesting, so quickly, the White House today saying, well, maybe there's some wiggle room here on tax cuts. Maybe we'll actually compromise. You're not a fan, though.
No, I think some people on Wall Street like it, but I think it's evidence that the president is weak, confused, and really has no idea where he's going. The fact is we got a huge deficit in this country. We can't afford these tax cuts. My view is we can't afford them for the rich or the middle class. They should expire, and we've got to start closing this huge gap and paying our bills.
But how do you close that gap? I mean, at the end of the day, do you just have to work yourself through this recession over years?
Yes. The recovery, whatever it is over. It was a little bounce for 2 quarters. We built up a little inventory that had been depleted. Now we're bumping along the bottom, growing at 1 or 2%, almost no job growth. Our current account deficit, our trade deficit is soaring again because we're buying everything from the Far East that the stimulus money is designed to cause purchases. So this isn't working, and the reason it isn't working is we spent 30 years building up massive amounts of debt in the household and business and public sector. We've had the Fed printing money like there's no tomorrow now and creating bubble after bubble for years.
Ask you about
that. We've got fundamental economic problem that can't be solved by more stimulus. That's how we got here, not by more debt.
Yes, but we're getting more stimulus. That's exactly what we're getting.
Right.
Ben Bernanke has a plan to pump $600 billion into the economy. He's printing the money. He's buying long-term treasuries.
Well,
is that a mistake?
It's a great mistake. It's alarming. I think they've jumped out of the deep end into the abyss. What they're now dispensing with this QE2 on top of the QE $1.5 trillion of new monetization. This is just high-grade. This is high-grade monetary heroin. It's dangerous. It is not going to.
It's a drug.
It's a drug.
You don't like Geithner either.
Pardon?
You don't like Geithner either.
No, I don't, because all of this is based on the idea that somehow if we just inject enough stimulus and bailout money into Wall Street through the Fed's money printing and through all of those TARP and other bailouts that we've had, that we can solve the problem of Main Street. And that is just wrong. The only thing that we're doing is creating the next financial bubble. You could see it in the stock market today. And the theory that we heard from the Fed chairman yesterday that we're going to get stock prices up, he's saying that, cheerleading for stock prices. No Fed chairman has ever done that in history. And the reason we're going to do that is we'll make everybody think they're wealthier. And if they think they're wealthier, they're going to spend more money. There is no one on Main Street in America, in Indiana, Wisconsin, or Nevada, who believes that or is stupid enough to fall for that. And yet that is the policy of this country. It is alarming. It is dangerous. It is heading, in my view, for a very bad ending.
Well, David Stockman, is there anybody in Washington you do like?
Yes, Ron Paul. And I'm delighted to see that he will be chairman of the Monetary Affairs Subcommittee in the new Congress. He will haul Bernanke up there. There will be a real airing of what's going on. There'll be some real spotlight put on the Fed.
Well, let's clarify something here, because Ron Paul, Rand Paul's father, actually does not approve of the Fed at all. I don't think that's what you're saying. You just don't like the way the Fed's being run. I
don't like the way the Fed is being run, trying to macro manage the whole economy with this interest rates at zero, with this massive incentive for more debt creation that we can't afford. And more importantly, they've driven the cost of government debt down to zero. So now they're telling all the congressmen who've spent us into almost bankruptcy already, the cost of debt is free, so just issue a bunch more and avoid the problem, ignore the fact that we're borrowing $1 trillion a year from the Chinese, from the OPEC, and from hedge fund operators in the Isle of Man. This is a terrible signal to the politicians. Why would they why would they alienate their constituencies, impose any kind of restraint if they can just issue debt for free?
But who's going to have the backbone to say, this isn't how we solve the problem. We've really got to take our medicine. We've got to slash our budgets. We've got to, I mean, you mentioned one name, but one name only.
Well, I hope there's a little encouragement coming out of this election. There's a total change in the House. At least we're not going to be doing any more stimulus spending. At least the spending spree will be curtailed. But the problem is we have a built-in trillion-dollar deficit that's going to take a congressional majority to do anything about. And if the Republicans say no tax increases ever, and the Democrats say no entitlement cuts or Social Security reform ever, then we are really in a bad fix.
Now, you're one of these people who's really benefited from the way things have been. You're an investment banker,
sure,
made millions and millions of dollars, been very, very successful, and you're stepping out here and saying the system as it's set up doesn't work. Are you also against too big to fail? Because we've really enshrined too big to fail.
Absolutely. That's where the whole problem started, when too big to fail was actually set up in the 1980s. It was then in 1998 in the crisis, you remember, with long-term capital, and then when we had the dot-com bubble burst. Constantly the Fed has told the market, don't worry, we got your back, and if push comes to shove, we'll inject more heroin into the system.
Washington's too close to Wall Street. That's what I hear you saying. David
Absolutely.
Stockman, thanks so much for being with us today. Really appreciate it.